Awesome. Hey guys, welcome to Celebrate 21. This is our fourth day of Celebrate 21, and we are just excited to be back with you, the Century 21 faculty, Century 21 University faculty, and our operations team, and everyone who is here to talk about and help you learn more for your business. Today, we have a great speaker who's going to help us to understand more how you can master your market. We have a Centurion producer who's going to be talking to us about today's listing presentation. What's changed and what hasn't, right? Before we get started, as I mentioned, remember, keep your phones on mute, keep your cameras off. We're going to monitor the chat, so all of those things. If you missed day 1, day 2, or day 3, which was a great speaker yesterday, John O'Leary had some fantastic things to say. If you missed any of those days, you can always go back to Celebrate 21 Learning Sessions.splashthat.com to listen to all of the recordings that we have here at Celebrate 21. They are yours to listen to for the next 30 days. So make sure you go back and access those recordings. And also, we're going to have more classes all through. 21 days of learning will be here for you. And yes, Cynthia, I will put that in the chat as soon as I'm finished. Absolutely. So you'll have it there. 21 days of learning will be here for you. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow, to wrap up our week that has been focused on building a strong foundation, we're going to bring back all 3 of our subject matter experts from Monday, from Tuesday, and from today to have a Q&A panel style interview to help you move forward. If you have any more questions, or we're going to have some questions for them as well, but some of the things that may have come up during the week that they can answer for you and move that conversation forward. So in order to access those classes, again, as you did today, always go back to Celebrate 21 Learning Sessions.splashthat.com. I know it's a mouthful. I'm going to put it into the chat so that you all have it there. Well, today I am so excited to bring this speaker to you. You know, guys, this is a Centurion producer who's been in real estate for 4 years. That's amazing. I love it when we get a fresh approach to the business. Matt Hornaday from Century 21 Stein Posner is going to be talking to us today about your listing presentation, about the listing presentation. There's a lot that's changed in this world, in this environment that we have, and there's a lot that hasn't. And it's really an opportunity that we have to get a subject matter expert to sit down with us and spend some time with us out of their busy schedule. Matt actually started in real estate, as I mentioned, 4 years ago, but before that, he spent 10 years in corporate America. So this guy has a ton of experience, a great outlook and look out at the business. And I am really excited to present to you and to let you guys have, for the next few minutes, Matt Hornaday. Matt, you're there with us?
I am officially here. How's it going, guys?
Awesome.
All right, so hopefully I live up to all the hype that Brian just put on me. So bear with me on that one, guys. We'll definitely make it work, and hopefully this will be an awesome session for everybody that's attending. So let me just make sure you guys are all seeing my screen, right? You guys are all good to go? Brian, you want to just check?
Nope, we're not seeing it yet. We're still seeing you, Matt.
All right, cool. Yeah, you guys don't want to see me for the whole thing. There you go. Got it now, right?
Perfect.
Perfect. All right, you guys. So we're going to kick this one off. And this is listing presentations. What's changed and what hasn't? All right. So first things first, let's talk about if you guys are in the right room. So if you guys are looking for a listing presentation that's going to defy mediocrity in today's market, then you're definitely in the right room. Right. And so, as Brian mentioned, my name is Matt Hornaday. I am with Century 21 Stein Posner in Boca Raton, Florida, and I will be your host for today. So the first thing I want you guys to do is let's focus during this session. So my phone is off. right? It's going to kill me, but I have nothing on whatsoever. So I'm not going to get buzzed or answer anything during the session, because giving you guys this information is obviously the most important thing that I can be doing at this time. So it might be a good time for you guys to turn off your phones if you have them on at this point in time. But let's get into the content. So the most lucrative agents have realized that, or they're typically doing about 60 to 70% of their business in listings and another 30 to 40% of their business in buyers. Now, this will be collaborative, so you guys will be able to answer some questions. So this is our very first one. So why do you guys think that the most lucrative agents are doing about 60 to 70% listings and 30 to 40% buyers? You guys feel free to jump in. And if you don't, I will end up answering the question.
They're coming in now. Here we go. Wow. To have balance, more control. Listings provide stability, control of their time, leverage time. They are the employer, not employee. Buyers take up a lot of time and they keep coming from there.
Got it. So you guys actually hit a lot of the points that we want to go over. So from the research that we've done, we've identified a couple areas as the most important for understanding why a listings-based business is so important. So the first one is profitability. And again, this is going to be another one where I'm asking you guys some questions, because this is like one of the things I love the most. So when you have a listing, either anybody that's done it before or anybody that just wants to give an answer, how many transactions can you actually get from one listing?
We have 4. We have 3, at least 3. It's going back and forth, Matt. 3 and 4, 3 to 4.
Got it. So the most that I've personally ever gotten was 4 from one listing. Of course, that number really ends up being infinite, right? But let's talk about the number 4, because that's usually the, I won't say easiest one, but one that happens the most. So you get the listing, you bring the buyer to that listing, you help the seller end up buying a new home, and then you end up helping the buyer who bought your seller's home sell their home. So that's the way that I ended up getting 4 transactions. And that's like the most beneficial thing when it comes down to listing and obviously the profitability when it comes down to that. So the other piece is stability. And I think we've heard a couple people mention this as well. So when you control the inventory, you control the market share, right? And you guys really end up driving the destiny of what's going to happen in your particular marketplace with that inventory. And so that's another reason why it's key. And then somebody else mentioned scalability. So that's obviously another key thing for us as well, because when it comes down to working buyers and sellers, we all only have 24 hours in our day, and we can only work so many buyers within that 24-hour window. However, when you guys end up owning the listings, you have the ability to really scale that out and manage all of those listings and potentially get offers on multiple listings throughout a day, where you might take a buyer out for half a day and hope and pray that they're going to end up submitting an offer. So those are the 3 key ways that we really want you guys to think about the benefits of being a listing agent. So the next thing for you guys is when we talk about what's going on in the marketplace, and this is a statistic that we got from NAR, but listings are selling in 21 days with a median of 4 offers. And this is pretty much spot on to our marketplace. So again, I said I'm in South Florida in Boca Raton. What we've been seeing is the first day of properties hitting the market. When I'm representing my buyers, I'm actually calling the listing agent and checking, do you guys already have an offer? I mean, it's that crazy right now. So seeing 4 offers happen within 21 days is 100% on par. We're even seeing that happen within the first day, which is pretty crazy. Now, when it comes down to you guys actually giving your listing presentation, this is what research has pretty much shown that all the top agents are actually doing to really secure their listing and really get everything that they need to deliver a solid listing presentation to that particular seller. So one of the first things that we want to do is accumulate intel, right? Then after that, it's showing that we are the masters of our marketplace. And then of course, conveying your marketing strategy is always key. And then discussing their home market position as well. And then in their listing, there's always going to be some form of objection and commission, and that's not a bad thing. So we want you guys to know that that's okay, because that means that you actually have an engaged seller. So don't think of that as a negative connotation. It's really a good thing. And so these are the focal points that we'll be going over in today's presentation. So the first thing we're going to jump into is accumulating intel. So when we're doing this, one of the first things that I like to do is pre-qual my seller. So of course, you guys know we're always pre-qualifying our buyers, but it's very important for you guys to pre-qual your seller as well. And so that's one of the number one things that we'll do, like right off the bat. Then of course, you guys are going to do a walkthrough of the home. And that walkthrough of the home, the seller is going to end up telling you some of the things that they love about the home, they love about the community, maybe even some things they don't love about it, right? So we need to get all the information we possibly can from them. And of course, take all the information that we researched in advance to compile what we need to end up speaking to whenever we're showing that home. And then the last thing is our needs analysis. So as you guys are walking through the property, you're also looking for any potential deficiencies, something that might show up on an inspection report, or anything that might be just out of scope or might cause an issue or concern for a potential buyer. We want to identify those items so that we can address those with the seller as well during our actual listing presentation. So jumping into the nitty gritty on how it works today, what you guys need to be focusing on in your listing presentations is not just about getting the actual listing. It's about creating a whole game plan for your sellers. And there's a major reason behind that. And we're going to get into that in our next slide. But you guys need to develop this game plan, because once we set the game plan for the sellers and we start eliminating the pain points that they're going to have, that stress is relieved and they're instantly like, you're our savior. You're definitely who we want to go with and work with on this transaction.
Hey, Matt, before we move forward there, well, guess what? That was the question.
Huh.
The question in chat was literally, please elaborate on pre-qual of the seller. And there you go. Goes right into it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Love it. All right. So when it gets into pre-qualifying our seller, what we want to know is what are their pain points or motivation, right? And this is just the beginning stages. So the first piece is understanding, what are they doing? Are they upgrading?
Okay. I wasn't sure if I had something and I lost.
All right, so we want to understand if they're upgrading or maybe they're downsizing, right? Maybe they're moving for schools for their kids. Maybe they need a little extra space in a home office. They might be moving for pets. I've actually had clients that literally were moving because they needed more space for their pets. And then they could be actually leaving the area as well. And so you guys want to know that. And that's one of the major points that I definitely want to get through with you guys today, is asking that question of where they're going next. Because again, as we were talking about the benefit of having listings and getting multiple transactions from it, there's some people that miss this piece in the pre-qualification process to really understand where their seller needs to go next and see where they need to shift their conversation in order to handle that piece. And of course, the last thing that they could be doing is trying to capitalize on the market. So this very first point is all about their pain points. And then I'm going to go through, and I promise I'll get back to all the qualifications as well. But the next step that I want to go through is, once we understand which way the seller is going, whether they're staying local or if they're leaving the area, that's going to dictate how we end up having our conversation with them. So if they end up staying in the area, then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're educating them on the marketplace, right? So now we know that we've got them as a seller and we're going to acquire them as a buyer as well. And so we need to educate them on both pieces of that. And the seller side right now, it's great. It's literally a seller's market. And on the buyer side, it could be a challenge, right? There's multiple offers, listings are going very quickly in the marketplace. So we need to get them prepared for how things are going to work on both sides of the transaction. And then one of the things that I like to talk about with the seller, and this is part of our pre-qual process as well, is the home position. So I actually use a ranking system, and we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail later on as well. But it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's just literally a rating system of the condition of the property. And I sit down with the seller and we discuss where they position their property or where they feel their property is positioned within that ranking system. And we come to an alignment on that as well while we're talking about the home position. The reason why this is important for you guys is that obviously the condition of the home will dictate its overall value. And so when you get into that conversation of where they need to price the home, that's going to be a major factor in it as well. And so then, of course, the next piece that we're going to get into is the marketing strategy. So what we're going to do to promote their property, to get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible and bring as many people to the property as we possibly can as well. And so after that, what I like to do is I like to talk to them about their next steps in terms of temporary housing. So if they're staying in the area, I want to know, do they have a place that they can go to if we end up selling their home extremely quick and we can't get them into a home, just as quickly on the same closing date? Or do they need it to be, we need to match up the sale of our home and the purchase of our new home to close on that exact same date? If they've got a family member that they can stay with, are they open to renting? Maybe they do a short-term rental. Or if we need to, do we need to discuss a post-occupancy agreement? So those are like all the questions that I end up talking with my sellers about to try and make sure that we do have a housing situation for them after we end up selling their home, because we all know that's going to go quick. So then the next thing that we go into is the new home needs, right? So we want to understand what they're looking for in their new home. We also want to understand what potential contingencies that they're going to have, right? So again, pre-qual question: do they need to sell this home in order to move forward and purchase their next home, right? Very important for us to know, because if they need those proceeds from the sale of this home, then obviously there's going to be a contingency on them purchasing the next home until we're able to sell their home, get it officially closed. And then the other thing that I like to go through with them is just providing a realistic view. So this to me is how we end up setting ourselves up to win the listing presentation. And again, this is all about alleviating that pain and really setting a full game plan for them. So now we've talked about what we're going to do for them on the seller side. Then we talked about what their needs are on their buy side. So now we're tying everything back together and what we're going to do to execute both sides of these transactions for this particular seller. Then, of course, after that, we want them to get pre-approved, and then we want them to also get out and start looking at property as soon as possible. And I also like to go over how we would end up optimizing their offer as well. And I'm sure you guys will ask a couple questions about that. So just jumping into this real quick, what we end up doing when we're talking about optimizing our offer for our sellers to end up winning as a buyer is we'll talk about obviously the purchase price, their initial escrow deposit, down payment, inspection period, their loan commitment time period, of course, the closing dates, post-occupancy that we were talking about a little bit earlier, and even using something like who pays title. So if you're in an area where it's common that the seller pays title, it might be beneficial for you guys to utilize that in a way that it might help your seller actually win when they're going to buy a property. And then as we move over to leaving the area, the first three pieces are exactly the same, right? The only change there is the relocation strategy. So again, we want to know if they have a place that they're planning to move to. Are they planning to rent? Or are they planning to buy when they relocate out of our area? And the major thing that I want you guys to focus on is making sure that you get them to commit to you referring them another Century 21 agent in that area that they're going to. That's the biggest piece, right?
Hey, Matt.
Yes, sir.
We do have a quick question in the chat about home positioning. Can you tell us more on home position?
Okay, yeah. So when I go into home positioning, so we will skip this slide later on then, since we'll talk about it now. When it comes to home positioning, I use a rating system 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, and I talk about this with my clients up front, whether it be a buyer or a seller. I think this will really help you guys in that pre-qualification stage. So a 1 to me is a property that is a complete gut job, meaning you can't move into that house without doing a full renovation. A 2 would be something that is in its original condition, meaning the current owners have never done anything to the property. It may be it's outdated, right? But they kept it up, right? So it's functional and you can technically live in it, but you may not love the finishings of the particular property. And then number 3 is partially renovated or had been remodeled, but it's now not necessarily up to the newest terms. So there we think about maybe the kitchen was redone, but the floors and the bathrooms are still original. Or maybe the bathrooms were done, but this area wasn't done. So partial renovation or a renovation that was done 10 plus years ago and not necessarily with today's trends. And then a 4 would be something that is in line with what you would see in your areas in terms of new construction. So for us in our area, what new construction is white shaker cabinets, quartz countertops. The whole house is light and bright. They typically are using a wood look porcelain tile on the floors or something light and bright there as well. But that would be a 4. And so when we go into talking about where the home is located, it's either a 1, 2, 3, or 4 in that grouping. And then what I like to do is I'll have my pricing strategy depending on where the house actually will reside, if it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so that when I start talking about the actual positioning of the home from a dollar standpoint, I can refer back to that initial home positioning that me and the seller have already agreed to. Your home is a 3 or your home is a 2, right? And so then here's where the price points are, or here's where we're seeing the price points land for homes that are in that category. So does that answer your question? Brian, let me know if it doesn't for them. And
it looks like she said that is excellent. So
perfect. Perfect. All right. So next thing that we want to go into is being the master of your marketplace, right? And so this is really when it comes down to understanding your metrics and understanding your numbers and really communicating that out to your sellers. When we go into this, like if you just think about it, when you tell somebody I'm great at what I do, like that means nothing, right? But if you back it up with numbers, statistics, and facts, that is a game changer because that's something tangible that they can see that you've demonstrated and shows how well you are, right? Or how well you do things. So that's what we want to do here. And so some of the statistics that we're going to go over, and this is like one of my favorite things, by the way, too, because I love statistics, but some of the statistics that we're going to go over are going to be things that you guys should normally see in your marketplace. And just jumping into this, one of the first things that we always talk about is the market stratification. So I think about this as like your buyer profile, right? And here what you want to understand is even understanding where the buyer would be for your seller from a price point standpoint, right? One of the things that I love to do with this when it comes down to even where I might list a property is understanding where buyers are even getting their pre-approval numbers at. So usually what I end up seeing is lenders are going to give them on the solid numbers, right? And it's usually in increments of 25. So it would be, example, if it was a $500,000, right? Or 525 or 550, 575, 600. And so understanding where those lenders are going to end up giving their pre-approval letters is usually lines up with where the buyers end up wanting to search for their properties as well. And then the other thing is obviously understanding the loan limits in your area as well, to know if you would be in the FHA loan limits or conventional loan limits, or you'd be unconforming as well. And so I utilize that information to really help me in maybe bumping up my list price to help my seller get a little bit more for that property if I know it's going to kind of reside in a situation where that's where the buyer's normally going to search for anyway. Some of the other stats that we look for is obviously days on market. We don't have to go into much detail there. We talked about listings are sitting on the market on average about 21 days right now and getting 4 offers. But days on market is going to be something very important for you guys to discuss with the seller. One of the things there is that we want to show the seller from our perspective what's normally going on in their community, right? So what are the average days on market in their specific community? And you can even tie this back into what you personally do and how your listings have sold even faster than what's typically going on in their community, or even sold even faster than what's typically going on in their city. One of the things that I love here is if I'm going into a community and I know I'm going to be competing against maybe the farm agent for that community, I'll pull up their days on market specifically. and I'll look at theirs. And of course, I'll bring my personal data and show, how I am able to sell my listings faster than they are, even though they're supposed to be this dominant farm agent in that particular community. The other thing is our list to sell ratio. So same thing here. So what we're looking at is obviously where the property was originally listed at versus what it finally ends up selling for. And of course, the higher you get there, you would love to be at 100%. And I use this statistic for my own business, and I share this out with all of my sellers in terms of how I've done on all of my listings. But I also go over this detail when we're going over their pricing to show them what's going on in their marketplace. And the reason behind that is that sellers are always going to be looking online and seeing what's going on. They'll see somebody listed their property for X amount, and it may be way out of scope. But now, since they saw that somebody else was listed at that price, they think that they should now also list at that price. And so showing them what's actually been happening in their particular community with people where they're listing and the price adjustments that they've had to make, and then where they ended up actually selling their property at, is something that's very key for us to share with them. Of course, some of the factors influencing supply and demand would be if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. Like we talked about right now, it's 100% a seller's market with limited inventory and high demand. A lot of this is all in our seller's favor. And so that's pretty straightforward there. And then factors influencing desirability. So here, this is all about like the proximity to the home to where other things that people are interested are at. So for us being in Florida, people want to be at the beach. They want to be near the water. They want to be near, the major highways, stuff like that. And then of course, like near the best schools. So all of those will factor into obviously your pricing of the home as well and where you guys should be at. So this next slide is just the breakdown of what I do with my rating system that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. And so this is the 1, 2, 3, 4. And so just as you guys will see, number 1 is the house needs to be gutted. 4 is new construction or completely renovated home versus a 3 being moderately upgraded. And of course, a 2 being that original condition that we talked about before.
So Matt, there is a question about that. Sorry for jumping in there. But Holly Morris has a question. How do you handle objections to home position owner pride?
Home position owner what?
Pride.
Owner pride. Oh, you mean like when that owner has a 2, but they really think it's a 4?
I think that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. So it happens. It definitely happens. So what I end up doing in that particular situation is I actually show them the examples, right? So what I do first is we go over this. And so we discuss, what is a 1, what is a 2, what is a 3, and what is a 4. And then I'll have them tell me where do they think their home actually is first, right? So now they've told me, oh, well, I think my house is a 3. Okay, so let's look at some of the other homes that are in your community, whether they've sold or are active right now. Let's just take a look at where you would actually position. So I always bring my computer to every listing appointment that I need to, just in case I need to pull it out, right? And so this would be one of those situations. So in that situation, I've already looked through all the comps within their community, and I've already marked, and I have a little piece of paper with every single listing. I've already marked if a property is a 1, 2, 3, or a 4. So I can instantly go back over to those comps and just literally show them, hey, here's what the 2s are in your community. Here's what the 3s are in your community. And here's what the 4s are. So you can see this 4 is fully renovated. They've done everything that buyers are looking for. And this is knowing that as well, right? In our market, buyers are looking at kitchens, bathrooms, floors, right? Those are the major points in terms of renovation. And so if you haven't renovated your kitchen and you haven't renovated your bathrooms or your floors over that time period, there's no way that you can be a 4 because this is a 4, right? And you can physically show them that. Usually when you show them the difference between those two of, hey, here's where your property is versus here's where this is at, then it's a little bit easier for them to understand like, okay, maybe my property is not a 4 and really it's a 2 or really it's a 3.
Wow, that's great. I love that. And there are actually some comments in the chat as well supporting that. Another question to that would be, normally, How does the rating change the pricing model?
Good point. So obviously, in different areas, it might shift even more. And of course, during specific times, things shift a little bit more as well, because right now, what we're actually seeing is 2s and 3s are now getting 4 pricing, which is insane, right? And the whole reason behind that is because there's such limited inventory. But depending on the price range of that particular community, I usually do like, let's say it's sub 500. The price range in there will be somewhere from like a 1 to a 4. It would be in line with what it would cost you to do a full renovation of a property in your area, right? And so if it costs you $50,000 to do kitchen, bathroom, floors, paint, whatever, that's how I start to factor those things into the difference in those prices. And then of course, we just try to adjust it down by whatever project would need to be done. And so I would say it's always a good thing for you guys to connect with an awesome contractor that can help you out with understanding what the cost would be to do some of these renovations. Down here, we also have, everybody wants a pool when they come to Florida. So understanding what the cost of putting a pool in is vital in my business, right? Because when I'm taking a buyer out, I can sit down and explain to them, hey, this home doesn't have a pool. Here's the cost that it would, here's the cost you would have if you wanted to put one in. And so it's not like a specific number, but it's going to be in line with what it would normally cost you guys in your area to do some of these renovations.
Okay, fantastic. There's a couple of other questions. One was about your research. When you do your research, do you do it at the appointment or do you do it on the spot? And someone actually answered and said he usually says he does it in advance, correct?
100%. Yeah. So before I even take, before I go on my listing appointment, I get as much intel as I possibly can. So I'm running the comps. I'm looking through all of the properties in that community that are in my comp grid, right? So in that time period that I'm looking for, we use 6 months in terms of appraised value, but I'll go back 12 months, potentially even 2 years if I need to, just to capture more data. Of course, knowing that you're going to have to make some adjustments there, right? Because if you think about even the past year, we've seen prices go up and up and up 10+% in our area, right? And so looking at data from early 2020 versus the end of 2020 is completely different. And so as I'm gathering my data and my information on the comps within that area, I'm trying to capture as much as I possibly can to just validate where I think this pricing would be. And so I'm looking, like I said, I'm looking at all the pictures of the home so that I can rate each one, right? I'm looking at where they actually listed, how many days they were on the market, and then what they actually sold for. And some of the things that I actually do as well is I'll go into the history of a property. And if they had to make a price adjustment, I want to see when they made that price adjustment. And after they made that price adjustment, how long did it take them to sell after that? Because they had to reposition the property. And at that point in time, it could be like a brand new listing, especially if it was way overpriced and they're finally pricing it correctly. And so as much information as you can possibly get up front, I'm gathering all of that. So when I come into the listing appointment, I literally just need to know, what is it? Is it 1, 2, or 3, or 4? And is there any other deficiencies in the home that could cause an issue or that we're going to need to take account of? So everything that I can do up front, other than obviously physically seeing the home.
Fantastic. Another question that came in, Matt, was about appraisals. Do you talk to sellers at this point about appraisals? Which I think we just heard that, but
yeah, yep. So this is another good conversation. We definitely talk about what's going on in the marketplace, right? And what's happening with appraisals. At one point, it seemed, and again, in my marketplace, like it seemed that appraisals were lagging. And of course that it makes sense because appraisals go off of historical data. So they were lagging where buyers were going in the marketplace. So we were seeing a lot of properties that weren't necessarily appraising at purchase price. And so now that's turned into a whole nother ordeal where people are waiving their appraisal contingencies, and they're also being willing to pay above the actual appraisal amount because they just really want that home. But yes, we definitely have this conversation with our sellers when we're talking about the pricing. And what I end up doing when we have that conversation is we talk about, here is where your home value is. I call it the pre-COVID, right? So here's your home value pre-COVID, which would mean, or at least how I explain it to my sellers, is this is where we would see your property appraising based on the historical data. And then we have a separate conversation of, here's the potential for your home, right? It may not appraise at that number. However, we might be able to get a buyer to submit an offer around that number, especially because we're going to be in a situation where we're going to get multiple offers. And so we talk about both of those things because I want my sellers to be aware that even if we get somebody to pay above, significantly above our actual list price, it may not appraise. And the last thing that I want them to do is get so stuck on that other number that they're not willing to come down to the reality if we need to go there. Of course, we're going to try and get our sellers every single dollar we possibly can. But if it would make or break the transaction, we always want to make sure that we're presenting everything that we need to for our sellers as well.
Wow, Matt, this is really, really good. And you know what I hear a lot is that you get a lot of practice at this. So it's not just something that you do once or twice a year. It's something that you're doing in sitting down and having a listing presentation appointment or a listing appointment multiple times so that you are well versed in this. So great job there. And we're getting a lot of questions. Good. So if you're okay with it, let's get a couple more and then we're going to move on and hopefully move some of those over to the end.
Okay.
A question came in from Arthur. Would it be an advantage using your rating system to have a generic price list for renovating items such as a bath renovation, $5,000, a kitchen, $8,000, etc.?
Yep, 100% what I do. And so in my area, I have a ballpark number on what these things should cost. And so I have that, and we explain that as well when we're on our listing presentation. So great question on that one.
All right, and then the last one I'm going to ask now, and we're going to hold the rest for a later date or a later time. You said you go through the pictures when you're trying to position the home against comps. How do you assess the comp if there is only one picture available?
So that's where we got to get more data, right? You may have to make a call to that other listing agent and see what was going on. And if that listing agent doesn't answer the phone, call the buyer's agent on that transaction. I actually had this happen to me. I think somebody set this up. I had this happen to me yesterday on one of my listings, for one of my buyers. We had purchased this property and the listing agent had removed all the photos from the MLS. And another agent had literally called me yesterday and asked me, hey, I'm just trying to understand what the condition was of the house because I'm trying to list a property in this community. And this is, one of the top sales that we would want to utilize, but we have no details. So I just walked her through all the remodeling that was actually done in the property. And it was a 4, right? And so I explained to her everything that was done. And she was like, all right, I got everything I need. Thank you so much. Now she can list her property, or at least give her listing presentation and the pricing behind that with that comp. And so be creative, use your resources, right? You might be a couple of other things that I've done is I'll look back at the history again, see how long ago that property had been sold. If I can pull some historical photos from that one, obviously you can't use that 100%, but if the new listing or the most recent sale of that property, I'll read that description, see if they say anything about remodeling the home, or if they're pretty much saying everything is the same as it was before, then I'll go back to that history, right? And see if I can get another listing from the past and see if there's any pictures there. Again, if you can't get that, be creative, call some agents, call the listing agent, call the buyer's agent, that will help you out as well. But then if you still can't get anything from all of that, try and capture more data, right? So maybe you need to look at a couple more months, right, inside of your comps grid, or maybe you need to expand. Maybe you're only looking at a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and you need to consider a 4-bedroom or 2 bedrooms, right, and make adjustments for that bedroom count or that square footage in the home as well. So definitely, I'm always being creative on how I do that. And I like to actually look at my valuation in multiple ways as well. So I start with just my overall, like, what do I see the value for this home based on the general comps? Then I actually run our CMA through the MLS and see what that number ends up saying, right? So the CMA through the MLS will give you just pretty much like an average of what's going on in that community. So I look at the average price per square foot, and then of course the square foot for the home. And I try to see if I can make these numbers kind of be in the same alignment, right? And then if I need to do anything else and start making adjustments for the property, then I spend my time doing that as well. So again, when we're making those adjustments, we're doing it for the square footage, bedroom, bath count, and the finishings of the home. So if it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4, if our home is a 4 and all we're seeing are 2s in that community, then obviously we need to make adjustments for the finishings that were done in that home as well.
Awesome. Good job. All right. There are a couple of questions that have been answered by our hive here. So I'm going to let you keep going, but there is one question that has been requested for the end of your presentation. Matt, if you could please explain the jerseys behind you. So before we're finished today, people are asking about your jerseys. So.
All right, for sure. We'll go over that. Not a problem at all. So one of the things that I wanted to go over with you guys as well is the statements that we use in our listing appointments, right? So we've got 3 that we want to consider here. The homes I list sell fast, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is the homes I list sell in an average of 12 days. And then number 3 is the homes I list sell in an average of 12 days compared to the average of 23 days in the marketplace. Now, the thing here is, which one do you think is actually better between these 3? And I won't even make you guys jump in on this one. Obviously, it's number 3. And the reason behind that is because you're using more statistics, facts, and data. And on top of that, you're giving them a number and giving them something to compare it to show that you are doing so much better than the rest of the marketplace. And so that's the way that we want to present these facts to our sellers when we're having these conversations about days on market, when we're having conversations about list to sales price, stuff like that, even number of homes that you sold in the community, stuff like that. We want to be able to use actual facts and give them something to compare so that they really can understand, like, oh, wow, like Matt is crushing it, you know? So going into the next thing, conveying your marketing strategy. Now, to me, I feel like everything in this presentation is the most important thing. My broker, Adam, would probably get mad at me on that one because he always says you can only have one important thing. So, but this is all extremely vital. So when it comes into marketing, this is key, you guys. So you have to remember that when you are marketing this property, you're marketing yourself, right? So you are putting out everything you possibly can to promote yourself and this property. 1, get the property sold. That's great. But really, you want to utilize this property to get more listings, right? You want to utilize this to position yourself as the expert in listings in that area so that other people are coming to you to end up listing their property as well. And so we're going to go into marketing strategies. So one of the things for me that I end up doing is I end up focusing a lot on video, especially now. So that's one of the things that we could talk about that's changed, right? At the beginning stages of COVID, I was still listing property, and I was actually communicating to my network that it was the time for them to get out and start listing, because as we saw that wave, there was a small period in our area where at the beginning stages where people were completely shut down. And then the buyers started coming back out, right? But the problem was with that, there was no new inventory. And so I started reaching out to my network and saying, hey, if you guys are thinking about selling your home, now is the time to do it. And I actually started putting out video content on this. And so I kid you not, you guys can probably check me out on Instagram and see some of my video from, I think it would be like April, where I was telling my sellers, if you guys want to sell, now is the time. Buyers are coming out and they're looking for inventory and there is nothing there, right? And then of course, some of the inventory started to come out, and then it was just getting gobbled up, and then it became even more insane. But video is key for you guys as marketing, because that alone got me a couple additional listings over that time period. And some of the other things that you guys are obviously going to use for your marketing will be professional photos. I am not a photographer. I don't know how to hit the angles the way that a photographer will. My wife may say different when I'm taking pictures for her, but when it comes to my listings, I need a professional to take those pictures. So that's always key for me. Doing a sign. So right now, with how quick homes are selling, I've seen some listing agents not actually put out a sign for their property. But again, you guys got to think about this. You're marketing yourself. And so when you have that sign in the yard and it has your name and your company logo and information on it, like, you are developing a brand in that community. And as neighbors are driving by and they see that sign and they see that for sale, and then you throw up that under contract within a day, like, that's going to really resonate with people in the community. And so you definitely want to have that up. And of course, there's always the opportunity to have buyers drive by, and now they can see that there's a sign in the yard and it has your phone number. Now they, one, know who to call, and they, two, know that that home is available for sale. Some other things that you guys can do for marketing is obviously flyers, targeted ads through social media, circle prospecting renters in that particular community, and even circle prospecting owners in that community. So there's some strategies there that you guys can utilize. Maybe you're in that move up community, right? But there are some homes that may be a little bit smaller. And so, for example, maybe the move up in that community is like a 5-bedroom, and there's 3-bedroom homes in that community. You could call those owners with the 3-bedroom homes and say, hey, I don't know if you guys have ever thought about, stepping up, but I'm about to list this property that's a 5-bedroom, 4-bath, blah, 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 right? And just wanted to know if you guys were in the market or even interested in looking at this, right? That could be another way that now you capture them as a buyer, you capture them as a seller as well. And then you could be in that 4 transaction realm that we were just talking about earlier today. So the big thing here for you guys is that marketing is more important than it's ever been before. And what I want you guys to do, don't take away from it. Don't not put your signs out there. Don't think that you should start removing away from your marketing for whatever, because homes are selling fast. You need to double down on that. So I've put out video on some of my listings, knowing that it was going to sell potentially before the video was even edited and ready to go on social. But that is our process, and that's what we're doing for our sellers. And so every single property will have their listing video, and we want to make sure that we're using that, because then we can market that to capture more listings at the end of the day as well. And one of my keys here is that the silent listing agent works harder for that next listing, rather than the marketing focused agent has more listings coming towards them because the marketing that they're putting out there. So again, something that you guys should think about there.
Wow, that's a really powerful statement. It's interesting because it was just not too long ago that I actually heard from an agent who said that right now they're not doing any marketing on their listings because they are selling so fast. And I was blown away at just what? Why would you not market your listing right now? That makes right. It's a great point on that.
Yeah, we're in a great market now, right? But what happens when things shift back over to even being an even market or a buyer's market? And now you haven't developed this whole marketing strategy and process, and you don't have the proof or anything behind that because you shut it down because you could sell a listing in a day. It's not going to cut it. Not going to cut it.
Wow, fantastic. There was a question about your Instagram, and it looks like Aaron has answered that. And on Instagram, are you at Matt Hornaday?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
That is me. So one of the other things that I like to do when we talk about setting the expectations for my seller, and this is really tracking your data, right? I set a whole roadmap for them. So this right now is our insane sellers market strategy and what ends up happening. So in our MLS, we're allowed to put a property in coming soon status, which means we're not allowed to show it, right? It shows online, right? right? As a property that is going to eventually be available for sale, people can click through the pictures. We're able to send it out to the syndication websites as well. And my purpose with that is literally to build the anticipation and demand for my seller's listing. So I work as hard as I possibly can to get everything that I need for that listing ready to go in advance of when we actually want to officially go live with the property. So in this particular case, we like to do the coming soon, the Wednesday before our Friday go live date. And if you can, we can do it up to 2 weeks before in our MLS. So that's something that you guys can utilize as well. The more, the better, right? If you're able to have your property marketed for 14 days and have buyers coming in and calling you off of that listing or for 14 days, that's great. And that's our whole purpose, right? So we want to build up the demand, build up the anticipation. And what we've identified is that usually one of our listings within that period from Wednesday to Friday before it goes live, we'll have about 3 or 4 buyers that end up calling us on that particular listing and want to see it. So then on Friday, we kick it in. Brian, you got a question?
Wow, how did you know? That was really good.
We went off mute.
Oh,
I've been
gotcha.
watching you. I've been watching you.
Quick learner. Yeah, there are a couple of questions, but I'm going to let you finish that point real quick.
Okay. So Friday is our go live date. And so on Friday, we flip it over to active. And then I put in our next step, which is our open house. And I don't put my open house in until Friday. And there's a reason behind that. Because from the date that I put my property in coming soon status to my go live date, I want to maximize the amount of people calling me, right? If I put out there that I have an open house that's going to be on Saturday, that removes some people from needing to call me because then they'll know, oh, okay, on Saturday, I'll be able to go and see the house. And so I want to make sure that they have enough information to see that the house is amazing and that they're interested in it. And then they have to call me for more, right? And so Friday we go live and then we put in the open house date and time. And then on Saturday, that's when we kick off our open house. And so I usually like to do mine between 11 and 1 o'clock. I used to do 4-hour open houses and all this other stuff. And I realized that people would come in the first 30 minutes and then the last 30 minutes. And then the last 30 minutes turned into an extra hour. And so what I started doing was condensing it down to 2 hours. And in that 2-hour window, we're still able to generate 20 to 30 buyers coming in to see the property. And so it's pretty effective. And again, it's knowing our numbers, right? So from there, can I continue, Brian, or you need me?
You can continue. I was just going to ask you a question that Matt, you still do open houses?
Yep. Still do open houses.
That's interesting. You're a very busy agent.
Well, so the reason why we make sure that we still do open houses is, again, you have the opportunity to generate buyers from those open houses. And at the same time, it's a more efficient use of our time as well, because with this strategy, if I can get my seller under contract with multiple offers over the weekend, why wouldn't I do it? Right? It's going to free up my time. My seller now doesn't have to end up leaving the house so that the property can be shown multiple times throughout the week and interrupting their schedule and their days and all of that. Like, no, we've decided that this is our strategy. And I would say on 99% of our listings, it works to the T.
That's awesome. I was actually being a little sarcastic there because I hear so often agents that say, I'm too busy to do an open house. And we do have a point in the chat that you can't do that in California. And if I remember correctly, in California, you can't get in. Maybe someone can explain that one to me. I think it's you can't get a buyer from an open house without the seller's permission or something like that. If I can remember correctly.
You can still use it for marketing, though.
There you go.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Build that traffic
that's
to the
the
property.
key. There was a question really quick from Yona, and that question is, what do you mean syndicating websites?
Okay, so when we're talking about that, we're talking about Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, Trulia. I think I hit most of them. But yeah, all of those, I think, actually, no, I didn't hit most of them. So like 360 of them or something like that. But those other websites where the buyers are looking for property, I think obviously one of the top ones is Zillow. I think we all know that. And so we want to make sure that we have our coming soon listing in front of those buyers that are looking on Zillow as well.
Perfect. And I just got some clarification about the California comment. It's because of COVID. And I'll just add to that, just like Matt said, you can still market. I believe you still can do some great marketing by an open house if you do a virtual open house.
So that's what we did. And I'd say Florida is probably definitely more lax than California is when it came down to COVID. But in the beginning stages, I think I had a listing. We started to shut down in March of last year. And I had a couple listings that were live and we wanted to get them sold. So, and I had new listings coming in. So I think there was a day I did 3 virtual open houses. I just literally went from listing to listing and did a virtual open house for about 2 hours, right? And so I would pop on, do a video, show everybody the house, take a little bit of a break, pop back on and do it again. And we did all of that on social media. And all 3 of those homes sold.
Perfect. That's great. I love that.
Yep. So going back through this schedule, and I'll try to speed this up a little bit, but the whole point here is about knowing our numbers, right? So we have that open house. From that open house, I tell my sellers that we expect that we're going to receive at least 2 to 3 offers, as long as everything else is lining up. 3 to 4 calls in advance of going live, 20 to 30 buyers showing up at the open house. We will have 2 to 3 offers coming in. So what our plan is those offers come in on Saturday. Maybe some of them come in on Sunday. We review all the offers by Monday. If the seller asks for it, then we go back and ask for highest and best from everybody that submitted an offer. And then we review the final offers with that seller on Tuesday. And then they end up deciding which one they want to move forward with. So this is key because I had probably one of the most anal sellers in the world. And I had to break down this schedule for him and this strategy for him, what we were going to do. And everything hit to the T. And I mean, if it wasn't, this guy was calling me with every contingency we got a call. All right, well, we got the inspection. So what do we have to be concerned about with the inspection? So I had to walk through that. All right, well, we got the appraisal. So what do we have to be concerned about with the appraisal? And I've known him for a year. And so I knew that he was going to be like that. So what I did was I brought this schedule for him and I walked through every single piece. And we literally verbatim, 3 to 4 calls, 20 to 30 buyers, 2 to 3 offers all within the first day. And what he said ever since was, Matt, everything you told me was right. And the reason why I was able to do that is it was all based on our historical numbers, right? What we've been able to do with this strategy is very tried and true, and the numbers deliver off of that. So just something for you guys to remember, know your numbers.
Hey, Matt, with that, especially best and final, there is a question from a newer agent, which I love. What are some of the main points that you consider when looking at best and final with your sellers?
Good question. So we look at a lot of things there. Of course, price is always important, but we also want to look at some other factors because we want to make sure that the deal is going to close, right? So in this particular market, some of the things that we've been seeing is how do we eliminate contingencies? So are they waiving their inspection contingency? Are they waiving their appraisal contingency? Are they willing to pay above the appraised price, right? If we're able to eliminate any issues, concerns, contingencies for our buyer, for our seller, that's always a win while also maximizing the price at the end of the day. And one of the other critical pieces is what are we doing for that transition, right? So when they sell this home, does this particular seller need to stay in it? Do we need to have a conversation about a post-occupancy agreement? And again, that one is very touchy. I know, again, we were talking about California earlier. There's certain areas where that's not allowed or it can't be used. So you definitely want to talk to your broker before you go into that conversation with your seller. But is that something we need to review? Is it a situation where they're looking to move out of state, so they need to hurry up and sell this house as soon as they possibly can? So an earlier close date is better than them getting $1,000 or $2 extra, right? So we're looking at all of those factors, even looking at the type of the loan that is there. Of course, course. And then one of the other things that we always do with every single offer that comes in that we're considering is calling the lender and qualifying that buyer through their lender as well.
Wow, all great points. Another question about your open houses. Do you have a copy of your CMA to show the report or numbers at your open house?
So the numbers for our open house, that would be different than our CMA. Our CMA is specifically just the data that shows, like, you know, the average sales and all that stuff within the community and the number of homes that have sold. I do have a copy. I don't physically have it right here. Like, all my notes are like right over there on another desk. And so I can share it with you, Brian, and anybody that needs it can get it from there. You guys can also reach out to me on Instagram. And anything that you need, just send me your email address and I'll shoot it back over to you.
Perfect, thanks. And there's a lot of more questions coming in, but I'm going to let you keep moving from here and we'll come back to some questions.
All right, not a problem at all. All right, so the next thing that we have is discussing the home's market position. So we got into a little bit of this earlier, right? Because this is going to be talking about the market analysis that we're doing for the home, and obviously prepping for that market positioning conversation with our sellers as well. So one of the things that I like to do is not necessarily use the word price, but as you guys have heard through this conversation, it's always been positioning, right? The word price kind of has that determined amount feel for a seller, whereas the positioning shows that, well, this is its current position, but a position can change, right? So it creates that sense of flexibility for sellers when we're talking about their home price or home value. And one of the big things that that we want to talk about here is actually the next slide, and it's going to be what happens with a property as it sits on the market. So one of the biggest things that I always end up telling my sellers, and bringing this slide is key for you guys as listing presentations as well, but one of the biggest things I end up telling my sellers is the longer your house sits on the market does not mean you're going to end up getting more money for it. The best time for you to sell your home is obviously as soon as possible, right? Usually, I think one of the things that I was told when I first got into real estate was your first offer oftentimes is one of your best offers, right? And so in this particular case, what the stats show us is that within the first 25 days, that's when sellers are getting the most amount of money for their property. And what these two numbers show, so you'll see that first number, that's the amount that the buyers are negotiating off list price. So in that 25-day window, they're getting maybe 1%, right? Versus 192 days, they're getting 2% off of their that list price. But then you have that other factor in there too, and that's the amount the market repositioned on that particular home as well. So we're talking about price adjustments. So the seller is now, as time goes on, making a price adjustment down, and the buyer is still negotiating on their price. So they're bringing that final sales price down even lower. And so this is one of the big things that I always talk to my sellers about, is understanding that timing is everything. And the longer your property sits on the market, people think, or buyers think, that there's something wrong with it. So you guys really want to take that into consideration. Now, I mean, it used to be like, oh, the property's been on the market for 180 days, something must have been wrong with it. Now I've got buyers that are like, the property's been on the market for 2 weeks, what's wrong? And it's crazy, but that's just the change in the market. And so you guys really want to make sure that your sellers are up to speed with that. And we have a slide, I think, at the end where we're going to talk about objections, but I'll at least give you this note now. For sellers, if you guys ever get into a situation where a seller is just stuck on a number, they're like, this is where I want to list it and this is it. Of course, you guys got to just understand, like, does that make sense for you guys to move forward with that listing? But if the answer is yes, right, then what you can do with that seller is get them to agree that if you guys don't get certain results on the home, so we could say the amount of showings, maybe your number is 10. If we don't get 10 showings within the first 10 days, right? Or if we don't get an offer within the first 25 days, we're going to reposition this property to X. And you can actually have them sign that on the listing agreement as well. At least in our marketplace, we have them sign it on the listing agreement. If we're not getting this, this, and this, or by this time, if we have not sold the property, we are going to adjust the price point to X, right? Sometimes that gives them the opportunity for them to feel like they had an opportunity to sell the property at the price point that they were looking for, but you would be monitoring that window so that it would still fit inside of this range right here. So they're not really losing out at the end of the day. So that's a strategy that you guys can use as well. So going into the CMA, this one is a very, very detailed slide. And so I'm just going to try and hit some of the high points for you guys. But again, I think, Brian, these slides will be available. So you guys can send them out to whoever needs them. But the 5 steps that we want to go through. So identify. Of course, what we need to do is we need to identify the aspects of our particular subject property, right? So the seller that we're working with, what's going on with their property. A couple of things in there: bedroom, bath count, the square footage, location, age of the home, the condition of the home, any upgrades that were done. Lot size is always an important one as well. Then what we want to do is we want to run our comps. So we want to do our search in the MLS and understand what's sold, right? We want to also look at what's active, because that's our current competition. What's pending, that's always a good one for you guys as well, because that starts to show you where the market is shifting. And sometimes you might have to pull what's off market as well. It might be that there was a sell that happened off market that you need to go into public records to find that information, because that one sell could help you out at the end of the day as well in understanding the true value of your seller's property. The thing with pending sells, again, don't be afraid to call another listing agent and ask them, hey, you know, I see you guys are under contract. How far have you guys gotten into contract? Have you gotten through appraisal? Did it appraise? Where did you guys appraise at? I've done it several times, and it's helped me where I see the values increasing in a community, but it's not there yet, meaning that the pending values are going up, but the closed sales are still a little bit lower than where I want to list a property. I'm calling that other listing agent who might have a property similar to mine and understanding where they appraised at, when they're supposed to close, and even when he's going to update it in the MLS. So if I have those 3 points, then I know, all right, as long as I can have this property closed out in the MLS before we have our appraisal, that's going to be a factor that we can use. And so I use that in my pricing strategy for my sellers as well. So the next piece is selecting. So of course you guys need to end up selecting the best homes that match your seller's subject property, right? And then we're going to go through that analyzing of the property. So that's the stuff we were talking about earlier, where you're looking through all the pictures, looking through all the data, making sure that you're comparing properties apples to apples and making adjustments to make sure that if they weren't originally apples to apples, that you're bringing them to that apples to apples category. And then the last thing we're doing is connecting all of the dots. So we're finding what the price range should be for our sellers, and depending on where they're at, whether they're a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So after that, what we have, and now this little thing is kind of getting in the way. But anyway, some of the things that we get from our sellers is, I want to list my house for more, or can't we at least try the higher price, and we can always drop it at a later point in time. So this is that part where, like, if you have somebody that just really won't come down and you need to go into the solution mode, you can always say, hey, you know, we'll give you X amount of time to get it at this price. And then if that doesn't end up panning out, then we need to do X, right? Adjust it to here. But really, my question would be for you guys that have received these objections from your sellers, what have you guys actually said to them to get them to come to where they need to be?
And they're coming in now, Matt. Let them interview other agents. I share the data. And if we agree on their price, it has to be my terms. Interesting.
Okay.
I bring them back to their time frame.
I like that. So one of the things that we use here is that feel felt, and then know, right? So in this particular case, I understand what you're saying, right? I feel where you're going with this. In my experience, here's what's happened, right, in the past. And then I know that we can do X, right? So a couple ways for us to kind of have that objection and have that conversation with the sellers is just kind of breaking it down, putting yourself in their shoes, letting them know that you understand where they're at. You've been in that position before, right? And here's what you guys are able to do to resolve that. I think the best thing you can possibly do is have facts, stats, and information that you, and examples that you can share with the seller of, here's another one of my sellers that was trying to do a similar thing, right? Well above fair market value for the home. And it ended up sitting for X amount of days, and then it ended up selling at this price, right? Versus if they would have originally went with me, they wouldn't need to make that price adjustment, and they would have sold it in that earlier stage of the property being on the market, which the data shows that you sell it in the earlier stage, you end up getting very close to, you get 99% of your list price, right? And so something to think about there too, guys. And then one of the things that, since we were talking about it, that we want to always make sure we're doing is obviously educating our sellers, right? Going through the market overview, always talking about the current inventory position. So that we need to tell them who's their competition, right? Because even when we're having that, that objection phase from them in terms of the pricing, you can show them what their competition is and what they're up against. If there's a home that is similar condition, that is at a lower price than theirs, that is still sitting on the market, that's something that they really need to take into consideration as well. Like, your neighbor's property has been on the market for 65 days, and we said that your property was a 3. Their property is a 3 as well, right? Do you want to sit on the market for 60 days, right? One of the other things I like to do is recommending a price range rather than giving them a specific price that they have to stick to, right? Because then it gives them that feeling that they've actually decided what that price was going to be. Well, like, it's been strategically planned that I need you to be in this range. And so the way that we end up doing that is, I look at it a couple of ways: either below fair market value, at fair market value, or above fair market value, right? And this can line up with timing of how quickly they would sell the home as well. So that now, soon, and eventually is how I communicate those 3 things as well. And so if we're below or we're at fair market value right now, solid demand, right? If you're above fair market value, that's always going to decrease the number of possible buyers, which ends up stifling their demand on that property as well. And so that's something that you guys need to be talking about with your sellers too, is which, Brian, you mentioned one of the people made a comment about it, how quickly they want to sell their home, right? Below and at is going to speed things up. If you want to go significantly above, then you're shifting over into that I eventually want to sell my home category, and the eventually want to sell my home category usually leads to them reducing their net proceeds from the sale of the home. So here, when it comes down to it, you guys, obviously awareness is key. You guys want to be as proactive as you possibly can, and set the stage for any future market repositionings that might end up happening. And so knowing your numbers before you go into that listing presentation will tell you what's going to end up happening, right? So I feel very confident when I go into my listing presentations in terms of my pricing. And I've even seen, there's been times where unfortunately, I've lost listings because I was honest with the seller in terms of what the value of their home was, and somebody else decided to come in and, essentially, I call it just buy the listing, right? Where they're going to list the property way above what it would actually sell for because they knew that they're going to have to make price adjustments. And then the seller ends up eventually selling it at the list price that I originally told them they should go at. So I do track that stuff. And so I'm a nerd when it comes down to that. So any listing that I don't win, I track and monitor to see how that seller is doing and see if they end up selling it at my price. And 9 times out of 10, it's within a reasonable range. And so knowing that and being aware of your numbers there is always key when it comes down to that. And then, of course, we never want you guys to be unrealistic, right? There's some times where it seems like you might have a great opportunity for this listing. And we've seen it in our business before. Somebody had a multi-million-dollar listing opportunity, but the seller was just being unrealistic, right, with where they should be in terms of listing their property. And so what that was going to result in is this particular agent spending a ton of marketing, right, spending a ton of time and dealing with a ton of frustration from a seller whose property wasn't going to sell because it was going to be so severely overpriced. And so in those situations, you guys got to really think about how you want to dedicate your time. And does it make sense for you guys to take that listing on? You know, sometimes it's not a bad thing to say no, right? And you guys got to think about that. So the next thing is commission. So I have listing presentations where we don't even have to discuss commission. We go through everything that I'm going to do for them as their listing agent and how I'm going to alleviate that pain. And they're just like, okay, like where do I sign? You know, and it's just that easy. But of course, there's some times where no matter what you're telling them up front, they might have that feeling of they need to negotiate with you. What I tell all my agents is like, you guys work hard for this money. So don't just give it away, you know, fight for yourself. One of the things that I was taught when I first got in by my broker, Adam Stein, was you can defer. Like if you don't feel comfortable having that conversation in that particular moment, defer to your broker. Say, I got to check with my broker on that. And then you can come back to that particular seller and, you know, have that conversation with your broker so that you feel confident. But usually, like, if you end up delivering a solid marketing plan and you break down everything for your seller in terms of what you guys are going to do, where you're positioning the property, and how you're going to end up maximizing their net proceeds at the end of the day, usually that commission at the end of the day, it's an expense, right? And they'll value you for all the work that you're going to do. So another thing to think about there. All right, you guys. So that was our last official slide of all the content that I was going to deliver. But we have a couple of things that we want to obviously talk about before we finalize this presentation. And then I think we still have a little bit of time for Q&A as well. So first and foremost, if you guys haven't done it before, the Go List presentation is phenomenal. That's actually where I met Brian back in Vegas. What was that? I think that might have been 2 years ago. I attended his Go List presentation, and it is phenomenal. So you guys can go on to C21 University and check out that Go List class, okay? And what I want you guys to get from this is obviously to pick and commit. So you guys need to pick and commit to whatever you took from this presentation today and how you want to adapt that into your listing presentations. Of course, determine how you guys are going to accumulate that intel from your sellers to do your pre-qual and understand what you need to get from them so that you know where they're at in the process, and gather data, right? Understand your marketplace. That's going to be a key thing in you guys being that go-to person for listings in your area. And your metrics, they're going to matter to the sellers. So you have to be on top of that. And then be prepared to discuss the market positioning of the property and, you know, potentially even repositioning depending on their particular situation. Lastly, of course, check out any workshops that are going to be offered in your area. I know that before they had actually done the Go List presentation back at our office as well. And so you guys can reach out to the training team and potentially get that scheduled for you guys' office as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending this presentation. Hopefully it was beneficial. I know it was a lot of content. I talked for an hour and 20 minutes. So hopefully it was beneficial for you guys, and I really appreciate it. And thank you.
Awesome. Matt, good job. I mean, we've got some questions coming through. Whoa, well, it just jumped like crazy. I hope those are all, yes, that's all a lot of love for you. As a matter of fact, I see one here that says, best presentation ever. That's fantastic. Good job there. A couple of questions for you before, let me get back up there. Janice has a question. How much time between your first walkthrough and giving your listing presentation?
My first walkthrough. So the walkthrough is literally the first thing that I will do once I get to the seller's house. And so if it takes me 15 minutes to walk through the home and get an assessment of what's going on, then 15 minutes later, we're sitting down at the table and having a conversation, going through my listing presentation. And so it can be as quick as that first piece is of understanding, understanding what's going on with the home with the walkthrough.
Okay, so I think that the question always is, do you do a one-step or a two-step listing presentation? One step meaning what you just said, you're walking through and doing the presentation right there, versus a two-step where you're going through the walkthrough and then coming back with a marketing plan.
No, I try to do all my preparation in advance, so that when I come in there, I can give them a solid number.
Perfect.
I would say, if there's a situation where, like, let's say I got a call like right now, right? And I didn't really have the time to do any of the analysis that I would normally do for one of my sellers. In that particular case, then I would just focus on gathering data while I'm at the house and having that explanation with them that I want to go back and do a deep dive to make sure that I can pinpoint the true value of their home so that we can set them up to win at the end of the day. And so if I ever need to pivot back from that, that's how I do it.
Nice. Okay. Aaron up in Philadelphia, yeah, go Eagles, asks, do you use an actual listing presentation with slides?
I'm so condensed. When I give my listing presentations, I take 2 pieces of paper with me. That's it. 2 pieces of paper.
Okay.
Yep. I just deliver the facts. So, and you guys might ask, what are those 2 pieces of paper?
I was just about to ask that.
So what I'll bring is the list of the listings, right, that are in their community that have sold, pending, under contract, and active, right? And then I'll have all the data behind that. How many days they were on the market? What were they originally listed for? What did they eventually sell for? What's the average price per square foot? What is total square footage for these homes? All of that stuff. So I have that on one. And then my other piece of paper that I bring with me is the averages. So the actual CMA, our CMA that ends up showing, all right, X amount of homes sold, right? X amount of homes were pending. Here's the average sales price for these homes. Here's the low, here's the high, here's the average days on market. It just literally is giving us the high level numbers. So what I end up doing is I'll walk through with the sellers, showing them, hey, here's the overall market, right? So here are the numbers. And then boom, let's talk about your specific community. So here's what's going on in your community with what's sold. And then we go through that ranking system, right? And identify where their property is at in that ranking system. And then I literally will just walk through that with them.
Awesome. Shakira asks, do you send a pre-listing packet before going on a listing presentation?
So that was actually something that I learned from you guys, Brian, that I was supposed to implement in my listing presentation. But usually in most of my listing presentations, we're moving so fast because I want to get there as soon as I possibly can, because our market is extremely competitive. Right. And so I just try to beat everybody else with speed. And so it's not always giving out or sending out a listing packet, but I know if I can get that face-to-face with that client and I can show them, one, what I'm going to do, and 2, how I got to my numbers for their house, that more often than not, it's going to be in my favor, right? And I'll most likely end up winning that listing.
Okay. All right. That's good. I'll take that because yes, I do love the providing that pre-listing packet, but since, like you said, it's market specific. And I'm here on the West Coast of Florida, and I know the same thing. It's, you want to get in front of them as soon as possible. So I'll take that one.
All right.
Here's a question back to your 2 pieces of paper. Janice says, so do you give the sellers any CMA or reports?
Yeah, I'll give them. So I print out a copy of that information for them as well. And so they have something tangible to keep with. And I still give them, I think I might have one here. Let's see. I always bring my 2 pieces of paper, one of these nice Century 21 folders that says identify, and deliver on the back. And so this is one that we actually had branded for our office, so it's got our website on the back of it. But yeah, I definitely will deliver that information to them because I want them to have something tangible. And of course, if they ever need to go back to anything that we talked about, it's all there as well. Actually, you know what? There's one other thing that I will bring if it's needed, and that's the contract. So that would be my only update.
That's a next question that's actually here. So and I pretty much knew the answer, but yeah, absolutely bringing the listing contract. Some questions that came in a while back. I know we have 5 minutes, so I want to grab these in real quick. The virtual open houses that you did when you spoke about when COVID started, did the buyers buy the property?
Yeah, so of the 3, the third one, we had a buyer that saw it virtually and ended up coming in to see it, scheduling an appointment after they saw it virtually. They ended up buying the house. The first one, no, it wasn't sold from the virtual open house. It ended up being sold on a separate showing. And then the second one, the second one was both. It was a mixture of a virtual and an actual live open house. So the person who actually ended up buying it came to the live open house, but they saw us doing all the virtual walkthroughs with people online as well. And so it still was able to create that sense of urgency and sense of demand, even though not as many people were in the house at one time.
Okay, good. And then the next question, or the next part of that question, was how do you handle 30 buyers at a time at an open house?
You get some people to help you out, especially during COVID time period. So some of the things that you end up seeing is there's a line of people out the door waiting to get inside the house. Now in Florida, it's hot, right? And so people ideally don't want to be sitting outside all day in that excruciating heat. And so what we've always done is I don't do it on my own. Like I work with some team members, some people in the office that are excited to do open houses with me, and we'll be managing different areas. So we had one where it was a 2-story home, and I had one agent that managed downstairs and I managed upstairs. There's other times where it's just, hey, you just grab the person as they come in and we'll rotate, right? And then you try to guide them into certain areas of the home so that people are still socially distancing. And so we could have multiple families in one home at a time, but everybody's still in their own spaces. And then we're just kind of playing the managers of making sure that, okay, this family's out of this area, you guys can transition over here now, and doing it that way.
Okay, good. I got 2 more questions for you, Matt. They're still rolling in, but any other questions, I'm going to save the chat and send that out to you so that you can answer those for us, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So the first question of the 2 would be, what's your advice to a brand new agent going on their first listing presentation?
Ooh, brand new agent going on their first listing presentation. All right. So number 1 is remember your training. So I know I actually remember my very first listing presentation, and what I did before that was I actually sat down with my broker and I told him the whole scenario of what was going on, where I got this potential listing from. And it was a for sale by owner, right? And this particular for sale by owner was a prospect that I've been working for a little while, and finally got him to commit to us sitting down and having a listing conversation. And I was like, oh my God, I think I was a month into this business, maybe 2 months in. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I sat down with my broker and we broke down the whole game plan of what we needed to do. So again, you guys, utilize your resources, talk with your broker. They've been in that position before. They know what to do, and let them guide you, right, with how to communicate with that seller to get your end result.
Oh, that's great. Good advice. Good advice. Last question before everyone is now asking about the jerseys. Last question, and I know that you're going to know who this came from. Why is Penn State so much better than Michigan?
It's not true, Adam Stein. So you got to get out of here with that one. All right, so don't ask your broker because they might say stuff like that.
You're the man, man.
What's up, Adam? So the jerseys behind me. I'll duck this a little bit. So I'll give you guys a little story about me as well. So I knew from when I was a kid, I was about 6 years old when I said I wanted to go to the University of Michigan. And at that time, I thought I was going to go to the NFL too. So like, whatever. But anyway, so one of my dreams was going to the University of Michigan and then making it on their football team. In my senior year of high school, I had like a severe injury. I broke my ankle, broke my finger, just did way too much. But anyway, so I was out for, a majority of our season. So I didn't end up getting recruited, and I had this passion of still going to Michigan. So I had a decision to make. I could go to a smaller school and play ball, or I could go to the school that I dreamed of all of my life and see if I could make it on the team. And so I ended up going to my dream school, and I ended up walking on the team, and I eventually made it on scholarship as well. And so that behind me on my right-hand side is just that reminder to always keep grinding and keep hustling, because whatever you guys set your mind to, you can do and you can deliver. And so that's me. And then on the left side, the white jersey, that is my college roommate and my best friend, my best man as well. And then this one down here, so he was on the football team too. And then this one over here is another friend of mine from college who played basketball over in Barcelona. And this guy actually introduced me to him. And then this guy also introduced me to my wife. So I've got my boys always supporting my back as well. And so got to have them behind me at all times.
Wow, Matt, that I got a little choked up there. That was a great way to end this. The realness of that and why that means so much to you.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, there have been some more questions that have come in, mainly questions about the slides. Ladies and gentlemen, we would love to share all these slides with you. I just need to find a way to do it. I'm not sure if I can. Just remember that we do have the recording available on the Celebrate 21 Learning Sessions.splashthat.com that you can go through. If you have the opportunity and you watch the recording and you see a slide that you like, feel free to take a picture of it as I work on a way to share these slides. This presentation is quite large, so we always run into issues sharing large presentations. But beyond that, thank you for joining us today at our day number 4. Remember, tomorrow we're going to be back here with Matt, with Sarah, and with Lori from our this week, talking about a word from the wise, our panel, to get all three of them together and moving this conversation forward. So if you haven't registered for tomorrow's class, be sure to do so, and we'll get more time to talk with Matt again tomorrow. Matt, this has been amazing. I have to save this chat for you because the amount of love that is coming out for you is just amazing, and you have been spectacular. So
thanks, guys.
Look forward to it. We're 3 minutes over, guys. Thank you again for your time, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Peace.